Hello everyone, welcome to okay, enough. Monster Mondays episode 20. We're finally caught up with the Monster Mondays series as of this video. For it is now, believe it or not, 5:21 a.m. of the very Monday that this was made for. How about that? Whether it uploads then depends on how quickly I can get caught up on the Writer Wednesdays and the Sad Year days, but for the record, that's when this was being recorded, so you'll just have to take my word for it, I guess, or maybe it'll show up in the properties in the video, I'm not sure. Anyway, so the theme for Monster Mondays this week is dolls and games. This is specifically for creepypastas that have to do with monsters in video games or dolls that take on a human form. Well, admittedly, Rap Rat would have almost made this list, and, you know, the Rake and a few other things as far as the humanoid form. I already covered Rap Rat back in episode 17 of Monster Mondays, and it isn't human-like in any form. And the human-like things, well, they're not dolls, and they're not from video games. Except maybe like the Polybius and a bunch of other things. Anyway, I was just scrambling for themes for the remainder of the short form stuff, so bear with me as, although this will be a shorter episode than the last, I still got a lot to go through, so I'm not gonna procrastinate with this any further. Our first story is Robert the Doll. In the late 1800s, Thomas Otto and his family moved to a mansion at Eaton and Simonton Streets in Key West, Florida, now known as the Artist House. The Ottos were known to be stern with their servants, sometimes even mistreating them. It was the treatment of one such Haitian servant that provides a twist in the story. Haiti again, huh? Does sound a lot like the Rap Rat, you know, theme that was going on. Since it was a Haitian that cursed the doll in that story, too. This woman was hard to take care of her son, Robert. One day, Miss Otto supposedly witnessed her practicing black magic in their backyard and fired her. Before she left, the woman gave Robert a lifelike doll that stood 3 feet tall and had buttons for eyes. Human hair believed to be Robert's and was filled with straw. Dolls that resembled children were not unheard of in this time. This one proved to be unique. Robert named the doll after himself and often dressed it in his clothes. Robert the doll became his trustworthy companion. He took it with him on shopping trips into town. The doll had a seat at the dinner table where Robert would sneak bites of food when his parents weren't looking. Robert would even be tucked into bed with the boy at night. Soon, this trustful relationship took on a strange nature. Soon after, Robert chose to be referred to by his middle name, Jean, after being scolded by his mother. He told her that Robert was the doll's name, not his. Jean was often heard in his toy room having conversations with Robert. Jean would say something in his childish manner, and the responses could be heard in a much lower voice. Sometimes Jean would become very agitated, worrying the servants and his mother. She would on occasion burst in to find her son cowering in the corner while Robert sat perched on a chair or on the bed glaring at him. This was only the beginning. Household objects would be found thrown across the room. Jean's toys turned up mutilated, and giggling could be heard. Whenever these unusual acts took place, Jean always said, "Robert did it." The boy took the punishment, but always insisted that the blame was Robert's. As the mischief grew, more and more servants took their leave as new ones were hired. The Otto's relatives felt it was time to do something. Jean's parents removed Robert from his care with the recommendation of a great aunt and placed him in a box in the attic. This is where he's resided for many years. After the death of his father, Jean was willed his boyhood home. He decided to live in the Victorian mansion with his new wife. Jean had become an artist and felt the house was spacious and would provide him with a place to paint. He went to the attic and dusted off his childhood toy. He became attached to the doll despite his wife's displeasure. Jean would take the doll along with him everywhere he went. He even sat in his favorite little chair while Jean and his wife slept nearby. The turret room became Robert's domain after Miss Otto moved him back into the attic. Their marriage slowly became sour until Miss Otto supposedly went insane and died of unknown reasons. Jean followed soon behind. Robert supposedly attacked people, sometimes locking them in the attic. People who passed by claimed to hear evil laughter coming from the turret room. For some time, Robert remained in the empty house until a new family purchased the mansion and restored it. The doll was once again moved to the attic. This pleased it as much as the last time. The doll was often found throughout the house. On one specific night, Robert was located at the foot of the owner's bed, giggling with a kitchen knife in hand. That was enough to send them fleeing from the home. Robert was later moved to the East Martello Museum in Key West, where he sits perched in a glass box. Despite his new living quarters, the doll is believed to not have given up his menacing ways. Sounds like Annabelle, I think. Visitors and employees claim they have seen the doll move. The smile has been known to turn into a scowl. One employee cleaned Robert, turned off all the lights and left for the night. The next day he returned to find the lights turned on. Robert's sitting in a different position than the night before and a fresh layer of dust on his shoes. Some say he'll even curse you. If you want to take a picture of him, you must ask politely. He'll tilt his head in permission. However, if he doesn't and you take the picture anyways, a curse will befall you and anyone who accompanied you to the museum. The same will happen if you make fun of him. To this day, Robert remains at the East Martello Museum in his sailor suit, clutching his stuffed lion, continuing his menacing ways. Credit to Anonymous. Alright, and alongside our dolls theme, our next one is Play With Me, written by Shiloh Rose. Summer was nice and warm that year. The sun, as always, brought warmth to your skin. The light breezes that swept through the neighborhood made the days not too cold or hot. It was simply perfect weather, but one summer Sally would never forget. Sally was a young girl, 8 years old, with long curly brown hair and bright green eyes. She was always polite, she never lied, and Sally did as she was told. Her mother and father simply adored her. They couldn't ask for a better daughter. Sally giggled as she played with her friends outside of their home. Various games like hopscotch, jump rope, dolls, and tag. Sally's mother smiled warmly at the innocent sight and mopped her hands on her apron, calling out, "Sally, come inside now, it's time for lunch." Sally looked up from the doll and smiled. "Okay, Mommy." Sitting down at the dinner table, Sally lightly bounced in her seat, excited for who knows what. Her mother placed down peanut butter and jelly sandwich with crust cut off, some carrot and celery sticks on the side, and juice to drink. "Thank you, Mama." "You're welcome, sweetie." As the child began to take hold of her sandwich, her mother took a seat across from the girl and smiled, watching her eat. "Guess what? Your Uncle Johnny's coming over." So I looked up and smiled. The corners of her lips had traces of peanut butter on them. Muddly Jomi?" She repeated through her food. Her mother laughed and nodded. He's coming to help Daddy with his job and to look after you, too. Maybe all of us can go to the carnival, too." Sally chewed the rest of her bite quickly and swallowed. "Can Sarah and Jenny come, too?" Her mother looked up and thought, "Well, that's up to their mom and dads to say, but if they can, sure." Again, the child giggled and bounced from her seat again, even more excited about this year's summer vacation. Over the next few days, Uncle Johnny drove up to the house, climbing out of his car. The man stretched his arms over his head and let out a tired sigh. "Uncle Johnny," a small voice chirped, earning the attention of the man. Sally dropped a jump rope she was playing with and ran over to the family member, hugging him. "Hey, Sal, how you been?" he asked, lifting the girl up with ease, giving her a proper hug. The girl giggled and looked back at her friends, who were now waving in their direction. "I've been playing with Sarah and Jenny. Let's go inside and tell Mama you're here." "Sounds like a great idea," he smiled. Walked inside the house, calling out the woman. "Mary, I'm here," he called, followed by Sally mimicking him. "Mama, he's here." The housewife hurried out of the kitchen and smiled to see Johnny had made it. "Johnny, you got here safe and sound." The man placed the girl down on the ground and gave her bottom a pat as to send her off, and hugged the woman. "Of course I did. What else would wouldn't I come here safe and sound? He laughed, walking to the kitchen with the woman. So I trotted over to the front door, calling out she was going back outside to play. Make sure you come in before dark. Yes, ma'am. On off the girl went. As dinner drew near, Sally's father came home happy to see his brother was there as well. Walking in with his daughter, he strolled up to Johnny with a handshake and a hug. Nice to see you, man. How you been? He asked, crossing his arms, watching his wife sit at the table for supper. Johnny gave a shrug of his shoulders, fiddling with his thumbs. Karen and I split up. Oh, that's terrible. I'm sorry. Johnny shook his head with a smile. Karen, you say? That's alright. I'm happy I can move freely without having someone constantly wanting to know where I am and what I'm doing. The two men laughed together, making their way to the table to eat. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. It's yummy, Mama. The adults smiled and chuckled at the child's praise. Plate after plate was empty, and Sally began to yawn over and over again, rubbing her eyes with her hands. Her mother smiled and gently rubbed her back. Looks like someone's tired. Time for bed. Tired? I am too. Nobody knows it, but I've been binging the recordings of these episodes in one go. Evidenced by the fact that I have the same bottle of Angry Orchard. So I nodded and hopped off her seat, picking up her plate and carrying it to the sink. Her mother rose up to take her to bed, but stopped from John grabbing a hold of her arm. I'll take her to bed, he smiled, earning one in return. Right, thank you, John, the man nodded, watching the woman make her way to clean the dishes and put up any leftovers. Then he looked to see his brother leave for the bathroom to wash up and followed the young girl to her room. John smiled and closed the door behind her, watching the girl rummage through her dresser for pajamas to wear. Need any help, he asked, watching the girl look up and nod. Okay, let's see what you got. The man waltzed up alongside her and began looking through her various pajamas. You got some strawberry printed ones. I bet you'll smell just like them in your dreams. He took the shirt up and showed her, giving it a few deep inhales. Sally giggled and shook her head, indicating she didn't want to wear strawberry pajamas. John nodded and placed the shirt back and then pulled out another shirt with a unicorn on it. How about this one? I'll bet you're right on Miss Unicorn here. Again, the child giggled and shook her head no. The man let out a small huff before placing it back, then took out a regular white nightgown. How about this? Be able to turn into a princess with this. Sally's eyes lit up and she clapped her hands excitedly and nodded, placing the gown on her bed. He reached over to her and began to unbutton her shirt. I can get dressed, Uncle, she said with a smile, looking down at his hands on her shirt, and smiled and nodded, continuing to work his way down on her shirt. I bet you can, but you're tired. Why not have some help? He asked, watching Sally nod a few times. Once getting her shirt unbuttoned, he slipped off her shoulders and gave her tummy a friendly poke, making her giggle. He grinned and took a hold of the rim of her shorts and pulled them down. Finally, the man grabbed hold of her nightgown and pushed the opening over her head, making sure her arms could go through the sleeves. All done, he said happily, watching the girl smile back, giggling when she bounded off the top of her bed. Johnny rose up and picked up her clothes. The door opened up and in walked Sally's mother, coming to tuck her in. Not gonna lie, I totally thought something horrible was gonna happen right then and there. I've been reading too many horror stories tonight. You ready for bed? She asked, walking around the bed. Johnny looked up and hurried over to the other side of the bed. I'll tuck her in, is that okay? Mary looked up at him and smiled, shaking her head. Of course not. She looked down at her daughter and leaned in, kissing the child on the forehead. Good night, sweetheart. Good night, Mama, giving the girl a gentle rub with her thumb on her forehead. The woman took the clothes Johnny had made her way out of the room. Johnny smiled at her mother and walked over to the light switch, flicking it off. He carefully closed the door to her room and locked it. Slowly looked over his shoulder towards Sally. Johnny wore a chilling, crooked smile. Okay, I stand corrected. He is about to do something. After the next few days, Mary noticed that Sally wasn't acting herself. She wasn't smiling as brightly as she did. Sally wasn't chipper and didn't speak with the same amount of happiness. Mary took a hold of the child's hand before she left to play with her friends and took her aside. Sally looked up at her mother with a confused look. Honey, are you feeling okay? She asked, kneeling down to be at her child's height. Sally stared at her idly and began to weep. Her mother widened her eyes in confusion. Sally? Well, Mama, I didn't want to, the girl managed to say through hiccuping sobs. Didn't want to do what, sweetie? I didn't want to play. I didn't want to play his game. The child looked up at her mother and hugged her tight. He touched me and made me touch him. Mary frowned and gently began stroking the child's hair, comforting her, lightly shushing her to calm down. Shh, it's okay, Mama's here now. It was a nightmare, that's all. The girl had a scary dream. Everything's fine now, okay? Don't worry about it anymore. She watched Sally look up at her breath chopped down from her crying, and smiled. Okay, Mama. Her mother smiled and kissed her forehead. Now go wash up. Don't want to play with your friends with a dirty face. Sally let out a small giggle and ran off to the bathroom to wash her face. Later that day, Johnny and his brother came back from work. Frank sighed, smiling when she saw Sally wave to him. Father waved back and closed the car door, making his way up to the house. Johnny looked up at Sally as well and smiled, waving to her. The child's smile slowly wilted, showing less happiness in it, but waved back as well. Johnny also wanted to walk inside the house, pausing when he heard the conversation between his brother and his wife. Sally, what? Frank asked. She had a nightmare, a terrible one. She said he touched her. Well, who the hell is he? I don't know, Frank, but it was only a nightmare. It won't inform me of what's been going on with her and why she was acting differently. Johnny furrowed his brows in anger, his knuckles turning white, then calmed down quickly, thinking fast. He put on a smile and walked into the room, making it look like he just walked into their conversation, and raised his brows. Whoops, did I interrupt something? He asked. Watching the couple shake their heads, Johnny smiled again and thumbed back in the direction of the car. I'm gonna head to the store. You need anything, Mary? The woman smiled and looked towards the kitchen. Yes, actually. Can you get some eggs, milk, bread, juice? Johnny nodded, about to leave until he paused. So I wanted to come along too. Just wanted to inform you, Mary smiled. Thank you, John. He nodded again and made his way out of the house, keys in hand, looking out to Sally with her friends. He kept his hand over his mouth. Sally, the child looked up at him and stared. Come on, let's go to the store. John made his way over to the car, gesturing for the girl to follow him. Sally sat there for a moment, then placed her dolls on the grass. I'll be back. Please watch over Marzipan and Lily for me. Jenny and Sarah smiled a little and nodded, continuing to play their games of dolls without her. Sally reluctantly made her way around the car, climbing to the passenger seat and buckled herself in. Did Mom want you to go to the store? She asked. Johnny nodded, put the keys in the ignition, turned it on, and backed out of the driveway. Yep, she wants me to get some food for her. Maybe I can get you something too. He grinned, looking down at the child. Sally nervously smiled back and looked ahead, watching the scenery pass by. As soon as they got to the road leading to the store, Sally noticed he wasn't slowing down to turn to the parking lot. She furrowed her brows, confused and looking up at him. Uncle Johnny, the store's back that way, she said, pointing in the direction of the Whole Foods store. Nothing came from the man. He just continued on driving, a faint smile on his face. The child sat up and looked past the back seat, watching the store slowly grow smaller till it was out of sight. Realizing they weren't going grocery shopping, the child watched her uncle drive into the small parking lot in the community park near town. No one went to the park on Sundays. Sally felt nervous, her breathing quickened, watching the man with wide eyes. Johnny put the car into the garden and turned the ignition off. Looking to the child, anger obviously showing in his features. You told your mom what happened, didn't you? He asked, watching the girl frantically shake her head no. You're not playing the game right, Sally. His tone had an almost You're not playing the game right, Sally. His tone had an almost a little singing to it. The man reached over and pulled the girl to him, ignoring the struggle she was putting up in her whimpering pleas. You said you'd play the game with me, Sally. You lied to me. Opening the car door beside him, the man climbed out along with the child and shoved her to the ground, quickly pinning her down, ignoring the cries and writhing the child was making. You have to be punished now for breaking the rules, he said in a slight sing-songy tone, and began to unbuckle his belt. This just in. A couple finds the body of an 8-year-old Sally Williams in the community parking lot. Week-long search is now closed. More tonight at 9. She could have sworn she closed her door before climbing into bed. I guess I guess I forgot. Getting up from the warmth and comfort of her bed, the teen made her way across the room and shut the door. Before she could climb back into her covers. The creak outside in the hall rose up. Was her parents up? They must have checked on her to see if she was asleep or something. As soon as she got her legs covered up, the teen froze in fear to hear a faint sound of crying. It sounded like a child. Slowly rising from the bed once more, the girl made her way to the door and opened it. The crying seemed to be louder once outside of her room. Peering down the darkness, the teen crept down the hallway, following the sounds of the whimpering. Once getting to the end of the hall, the girl gasped. Sitting on the floor in front of the moonlit window was a little girl. She was hunched over, crying. How'd she get into their house? Through the window? Swallowing hard, the teen spoke up. Who are you? How did you get into my house? She asked. Suddenly the crying stopped. The child slowly moved her trembling hands away from her face and looked behind her. Twitching lightly, blood replaced her tears, staining her hands. A deep clot of blood and hair on the side of her head. Blood leaking from the wound down her face into her dirty nightgown. Her bright green eyes seemed like they saw right through her soul. This is my house, the child spoke, her voice raspy, sounding as if she was struggling to speak. The girl's body twitched and wiggled oddly as she rose up to her feet and turned to face the teen. Her feet were dirty as if she'd been running through the mud. Scrapes covered her knees and the end of the gown was torn and tattered. The name Sally was strewn into the front. Reaching out with her blood-soaked hand, the girl smiled, blood staining her teeth as she spoke. And that was Shiloh Rose. And that was, Play With Me by, Shiloh Rose, aka Lamishi of DeviantArt. And final thoughts? Holy crud. I mean, at first I thought they were leading me in one direction, but then, you know, something far more twisted was going to happen, but no. I didn't want to believe that things would go in that direction with it. And, well, it wasn't exactly what I expected, despite the fact that I did kind of sift through these things when grammar editing things. You know, I used the Grammarly, I just clicked a bunch of buttons, I might have seen excerpts here and there, but I'm like, nah, it's probably not going to be what I think it's going to be. And, well, lo and behold, as the summer heat rages on, it seems sometimes the pastas get a little hotter along with it, like I'd proclaimed at the season finale of the spring season. So, if you were offended or otherwise, you know, this resonated with you in some way, I deeply apologize. I was not expecting that to happen. But the show must go on. And yeah, let's all just try to forget that what had happened in that particular story. The implications, anyway. And now we have a slightly less serious story called Herobrine, written by an anonymous author. A lot of anonymous authors now. Surprised that last one wasn't, considering the sick nature of what it covered. And not sick isn't cool, sick isn't like, ugh. I'd recently spawned a new world in a single-player Minecraft. Everything was normal at first as I began chopping down trees and crafting a workbench. I noticed something move amongst the dense fog. I have a prolonged computer, so I have to play with a tiny render distance. I thought it was a cow, so I pursued it, hoping to grab some hides for armor. It wasn't a cow, though. Looking back at it, it was another character with the default skin. The eyes were empty. I saw no name pop up, and I double-checked to ensure I wasn't in multiplayer mode. He didn't stay long, and he looked at me and quickly ran into the fog. I pursued out of curiosity, but he was gone. I continued on with the game, not sure what to think. As I expanded the world, I saw things that seemed out of place for the random map generator to make. 2x2 tunnels in the rocks, small perfect pyramids made out of sand in the ocean, and groves of trees with all the leaves cut off. I would constantly think I saw the other player in a deep fog, but I never got a better look at him. I tried increasing my render distance too far whenever I thought I saw him, but it was to no avail. I saved the map and went on to the forums to see if anyone else had found the pseudo-player. There were none. I created my own topic telling of the man and asking if anyone had a similar experience. The post was deleted within 5 minutes. I tried again and the issue was deleted even faster. I received a PM from the username Herobrine containing one word: stop! When I went to look at Herobrine's profile, the page 404'd, I received an email from another forum user. He claimed the mods can read the forum user messages, so we're safer using email. The emailer claimed he had seen the mystery player too and had a slight directory of other users who'd visited him as well. Their worlds were littered with obviously man-made features and described the mystery player had to have no pupils. About a month passed until I heard from my informant again. Some of the people who had encountered the mystery man looked into the name Herobrine. They found that name to be frequently used by a Swedish gamer. After some further information gathering, it was revealed to be a brother of Notch, the game's developer. I personally emailed Notch and asked him if he had a brother. It took him a while, but he emailed me with a concise message. I did, but he's no longer with us, Notch. Since our first encounter, I haven't seen the mystery man, and I haven't noticed any changes to the world other than my own. I was able to press print screen when I first saw him, and here's the only evidence I have of his existence. And then we have a picture of, I guess, the Minecraft world where he was. This kind of reminds me of one of those, they're trying to prove Bigfoot's real. With the pictures of it being way too far away to be clear. And that was Herobrine. Final thoughts? Interesting and a welcome reprieve after that last story, and, well, it's funny, I think one of the patch notes said that a Herobrine was removed from the game, but I don't think it's ever been confirmed to exist. Either way, I'm sure someone probably made a mod for it somewhere. If not there, certainly in, like, Gmod or some other game. Lots of interesting characters get made there, but I've been meaning to have an Adam the Forsaken get made in Gmod or something if that's still a thing. Or maybe in Second Life. That might be my next thing. Anyways, that being said, it was a decent, pasta, but I feel like it kind of went more towards, hey, let's prove Bigfoot is real than anything that was genuinely disturbing. And, it had that cliche, oh, I had a brother once, but he's dead, and I'm like, okay, they're totally trying to go for Ben Drowned on that one. Not very original. With that out of the way, though, that brings us to our last creepypasta. Ickbarr Bigelsteine. The last story, finally, for the week. Yep. When I was a small child, I was terrified of the dark. I still am. But back when I was around 6 years old, I couldn't go a whole night without crying out for one of my parents to search beneath my bed or my closet for whatever monster I thought was waiting to eat me. Even with a nightlight, I would still see the dark shapes moving around the corners of the room or the strange faces looking in on me from my bedroom window. I'm outside your bedroom window, if anyone remembers that. I might cover that one at some point. Might want to remind me in the comments. My parents would do their best to console me, telling me it was just a bad dream or a trick of the light, but my young mind, I was optimistic that the second I fell asleep, bad things would get me. Most of the time I would just hide under the blankets until I became tired enough to stop worrying, but every now and then I'd become so panicked that I would run screaming to my parents' room, waking up my brother and sister in the process. After an ordeal like that, there would be no way anyone would be getting a whole night's rest. Eventually, after one particularly traumatizing night, my parents had had enough. Unfortunately for them, they understood the futility in arguing with a 6-year-old and knew they would be unable to convince me to rid myself of my childish fears through reason and logic. They had to be clever. It was my mother's idea to stitch together my little bedtime friend. She collected many random pieces of fabric in her sewing machine and created what I would later refer to as Mr. Ickbarr Bigelsteine, or Ick for short. Ick was a sock monster, as my mother called him. He was made to keep me safe while I slept at night, scaring away all the other monsters. He was pretty damn creepy, I had to admit. Honestly, looking back on it all now, I'm still impressed my mom could think of something so strange and disturbing looking. Ickbarr had the stitched together look of a Frankenstein gremlin with big white button eyes and floppy cat ears. Cat ears. His little arms and legs were made from a pair of my sister's black and white striped socks. And the half of his face that was green was made from one of my brother's tall football socks. His head could have been described as bulbous, and for the mouth, my mom attached a piece of white fabric and sewed it in a zigzag pattern to shape a wide grin of sharp teeth. I loved him at once. From then on, Ick never left my side so long as it was after dusk. Of course, Ick didn't like the sun and would get upset if I tried to bring him to school. That was okay, I only needed him at night to keep away the boogeymen, which was what he was good at. So every night at bedtime, Ick would tell me where the monsters were hiding. I'd place him near the section of the room closest to the spookiness. If there was something in the closet, Ick would block the door. When the dark creature scratched at my window, Ick would be pressed against the glass. If there was a big hairy beast under my bed, then under the bed he went. Sometimes the monsters weren't even in my room. Sometimes they would hide in my dreams, and Ickbarr would have to come with me into my nightmares. It was fun bringing Ick into my ideal world, and as he and I would spend hours fighting off ghouls and demons. The best part was in my dreams, Ick could talk to me for real. "How much do you love me?" he would ask. More than anything, I would always tell him. One night in a dream, after I'd lost my first tooth, Ick asked me for a favor. "Can I have your tooth?" I asked him why. "To help me kill the bad things," he said. The following day at breakfast, my mom asked me where my tooth went. From what she told me, the tooth fairy didn't find it under my pillow. When I told her I gave it to Ickbarr, she just shrugged and went back to feeding my little sister. From then on, every time I lost a tooth, I'd give it to Ick. He would always thank me, of course, and tell me he loved me. Eventually, though, I ran out of baby teeth. I was beginning to get a little old to still be playing with dolls, so Ick just sat there in my bookshelf, collecting dust, slowly fading away from the attention. Over time, the nightmares, however, became worse than ever. So bad they began to follow me into the waking world, terrorizing every dark corner and rustle of the bushes. After one terrible night biking home from a friend's house where I swore a pack of rabid dogs was chasing me, I got home to find something strange waiting for me in my room. There on my bed, standing fully upright, in the soft glow of the moonlight from my window, was Ickbarr. At first I thought it was just my eyes were playing tricks on me again. They had been all evening, so I tried to flick on the lights, another flick of the light switch, then another with no change to the darkness. It was then I started to get nervous. I backed away slowly towards the door behind me, my eyes never leaving the shape of Ick's silhouette. My hand awkwardly outstretched behind, reaching for the doorknob. I was just about to get my ass out of there when I heard the door slam itself shut, locking me into blackness. In nothing but shadows and silence, I stood frozen in place. Not even breathing. For how long, I can't say, but after what felt like a lifetime of cold fear, I heard the shrill, familiar voice. "You stopped feeding me, so why should I protect you?" "Protect me from what? Let me show you." I blinked once and everything changed. I wasn't in my bedroom anymore. I was somewhere else. It wasn't hell, but the comparison wasn't far off. It was some sort of forest. A horrible, nightmarish place where partial embryonic abortions hung from the canopy. And the ground swarmed with carnivorous insects. A thick fog wafted around the air, and with it the stench of rotting meat and chartreuse. Lightning flashed across the night sky. In the distance I could hear the agonizing screams of something not quite human. My head throbbed like it was about to explode, pain forcing out a river of tears. In my mind I heard his voice again. This is what your reality would become without me. I felt their shaking footsteps approaching fast. I'm the only one who can stop it. It was behind me now, huge and angry, hot breath across my back. Bring me what I need and I will. I woke up before I could turn around. The following day I raided my parents' closet for my brother's baby teeth, giving them all to Ickbarr. Almost immediately the night terrors ceased, and I was more or less able to go about my life as usual. From time to time I'd have to sneak into my little sister's room and snatch what was meant for the tooth fairy, or strangle one of the neighborhood cats and pry out its sharp, tiny incisors. Anything to ward off the visions, anything from a shark tooth necklace to a cavity ridden by cuspid. I began to notice that Ick would move about my room whenever I left for any length of time, rearranging my stuff and hanging other curtains. He was even beginning to look more lifelike somehow. In the right light, his teeth would glisten, and he was warm to the touch. As much as he creeped me out, I couldn't work up the courage to just destroy him, knowing perfectly well where it would leave me. So I went on collecting teeth for Ick throughout all of high school and college. The older I got, the more things I would learn to fear, the more teeth Ick would need to keep me safe. I'm 22 years old now with a decent job, my own apartment, and a set of dentures. It's been almost a month since Ick's last meal, and the horrors are starting to crowd around me once more. I took a detour through a parking garage after work tonight. Found a man fumbling with his car keys. His teeth were stained yellow from a lifetime of cigarettes and coffee. Even still, I had to use a hammer to get out the molars. When I got back to my apartment, he was waiting for me on the ceiling in the corner, 2 white eyes and a mouth of razors. "How much do you love me?" he asks. "More than anything," I replied, taking off my coat. "More than anything in this world." Credit to Stephen D. Harris. And that was Ickbarr Bigelsteine. Final thoughts? Wow. That was very well done. I mean, here we get not so much a protagonistic doll, so much as a do what I say and this all goes away type. So, kind of like an anti-hero doll of sorts. It won't do anything for them unless it is fed, much like a pet. Oh, but at the same time, is it creating these nightmares, or are these things really becoming manifest because of her psychological condition? One may never know for sure, but it seems as long as she completes this ritual of getting teeth for it, it seems to be working. That being said, it's quite the disturbing story and would certainly keep me up at night, if I wasn't so tired. That being said, this has been Monster Mondays, and I'm the Forsaken Scribe. Thank you for watching, and with that, I bid you farewell, and remember, Mom's not here, kids.